Hi, everyone. This is Christy Stats again, the Midwest mobilizer with Bibles, Badges, and Business for the National Immigration Forum. We are doing another Let's Talk Immigration, and I am here with my friend, Tera Dent. Welcome, Tera.
Thank you. Hi.
Would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So as Christy said, my name is Tera Dent, and I am located here in Akron, Ohio, not far from Christy. And I work. I'm an academic advisor at Kent State. I'm a mom to 3 beautiful little kids. My husband and I have been married for 14 years. And I'm happy to be here and share some more of my experience. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do have a heart for issues of justice, and this is just one piece of that puzzle.
Well, I'm so glad that you're willing to share with us a little bit of your story today. So my first question for you is, tell me how you first began to think about immigration or the immigration conversation. What was that like for you?
It's a good question. So it started way back in college. When I was a student, one of my majors was Spanish. And so I spent a semester in Honduras studying Spanish. And that semester completely rocked my world. It was eye-opening in so many ways. I got to live with a Honduran family. I got to live among the Honduran people. And one of the classes that I took while I was down there was called Poverty and Development. The program that I went down with was through my university, through Calvin University. And it's a Christian college, so it's very, it's Christian focused. And that was really the first time that I was being faced with the question of, what does it mean for me as a Christian to live out my faith in light of the things that I was seeing? So with that class, we actually got to visit a maquila, we got to visit micro businesses, we got to visit banana plantation, a Chiquita banana plantation. We visited some coffee farmers. We visited the country's best hospital, which would be it would be put to shame here in the US. And it just really deeply, profoundly impacted me, and really just started to ask questions about justice. What does justice mean? What does biblical justice mean? What does it mean for me as a Christian to live and put my faith into works? And so it was really that semester that started this journey of me thinking about how I live and how it impacts others. And I remember reading an article by Nicholas Walterstorff. He's a Christian philosopher. And he talks about how in Scripture there is a quartet of people that God has a heart for. And that quartet of people are the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the alien. So thinking about issues of immigration, that the alien piece falls within one of that, quartet of people that God really cares about. So that's really where it all stemmed from, and it's grown from there.
Wow, what a significant experience as a college student. And that was with AJS, right? Association for a More Just Society?
Yeah, so one of the co-founders of AJS, Kurt Verbeek, and his wife, Julian Van Engen, they run that semester. They still run it even to this day, and I know have impacted many students. I'm just one of them. And I've learned a lot from him, continue to learn a lot from the work that they do. I actually just finished reading his newest book, Call for Justice, so I'll put a little plug for that, which really looks at this issue of faith and justice, and what does it mean to, care about justice as a Christian. So
that's significant. Yeah. That's huge. Well, yeah. So you went from tasting it as a college student, you and your husband moved through academic world in different states, and now you're in Akron. And I met you around the time your family started welcoming an asylum seeking family in a pretty visceral way. Could you tell me a little bit about what that was like and how you got involved with them?
Sure.
Yeah, so tell me about when and what was going on there.
Yeah. So I attend African Christian Reformed Church, and through my church, a good friend of mine, Nicole, is connected with, I don't even know what organization it is, Home for Refugees.
Home
It
for
might be Home
Refugees.
for
Yep,
Refugees.
in Southern California.
I don't know if she was directly connected through them, if it was another organization, but she got a notification that there were some asylum seeking families that needed sponsorship. And sponsorship is basically where a family agrees to take in a family, an asylum seeking family, and it releases them from being held. So there was a young couple in our church that volunteered. They really felt like they were supposed to do it. They volunteered to take this Guatemalan family in that was seeking asylum, and there was 4 of them at the time. And I think originally they were told that there would be 2. Anyways, they ended up bringing in 4 people into their home, and as a church, we just made it work. So people provided beds, people provided monetary support, people provided things like, toiletries, shampoos, conditioners, toilet paper, just some of those extra necessities that the family would need while staying with this young couple in our church. Initially, they were told it would probably be a couple of months of hosting them before they got further in the process and we found, housing for them. It ended up being quite a bigger undertaking than they originally anticipated. And so we created a care team within our church, and we work with Home for Refugees. And so I serve on part of that care team. I think from the very get-go, I was very interested in supporting and helping in any way I can because of my semester in Honduras, because I do speak Spanish. It's a little bit rusty, but I can communicate with the family. And so we welcome them in, and they are just the sweetest, most kind-hearted family ever. And it's just progressed from there. So they lived with the young couple for a while, and then they transitioned over to living with another set of friends of mine for a couple of months until we found housing on their own. And in the midst of all of that, there were 2 more family members that came. So the husband and the wife, they were split up. The 4 that came was a dad and 3 kids. And then there was another mom and another kid that ended up coming together. So we finally were able to help them all reunite, and they're all back together. And they're just a wonderful family. And I've learned a lot from them.
And that family actually, so they were part of the child separations that happened at the border 2 years ago. So that was strange seeing, okay, the US government has taken parents from their children in a penalty sort of way to try to deter asylum seekers from legally asking for asylum. And now you have a family that you are welcoming into our community who was a part of getting their child taken from them.
Yeah.
For you as a mother and as a Christian, what has that been like, reckoning with this is what we did as a country and we didn't have to do that. That policy didn't have to happen.
Right.
What was it like processing that?
I don't think I've actually fully processed that yet. And I don't know if I will ever be able to. Like, how can you wrap your mind around that? As a mom, I can't imagine that happening. It happened with their teenage child, and it wasn't a good experience. Some of the experiences that he shares from that separation, it's like heart-wrenching and sad. And so I don't think I've fully processed that because I don't know how to, because I can't imagine that. Like, I just can't imagine that happening to me or to my family. But that's also because I'm in a situation where I am privileged, and I don't have to flee an area, my home, because of violence or the gang, or worrying about my life being taken from me or my family, because, you know, things are stable here, you know?
It's sobering. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So what has it been like for you to think about welcoming this family and how you think about welcoming immigrants as a whole through the lens of your faith? Has it been like approaching it through the lens of being a Christian who cares about what scripture says?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it goes back to thinking about how do I live, and thinking about justice. So I guess like helping this family has been humbling, and it has forced me to wrestle with issues of immigration in ways that I didn't before. So it's been really good and really positive. I think I met you actually just before we welcomed this family in. And
It was that discussion that we had, right?
yeah,
Acme?
yeah, it
We had a
was
bunch of people at an Acme, which is a grocery store in Ohio. They had
random.
spare rooms that you could borrow because we were looking for a room and nowhere else was a quiet enough space. So we can discuss people's questions on immigration. And Tera was one of the people who came to the event.
Yeah. So that was really eye-opening for me, because before attending that, and I'm so glad that you hosted that, I didn't realize that there was a difference between a refugee and an asylum seeker, and what the difference is and why that's important. And so the family that we are supporting is an asylum seeking family. They haven't reached refugee status yet. So the US has one of the most stringent vetting systems for refugee resettlement. And I don't know how many people understand that, but it is very stringent. And yeah, so then asylum seekers haven't reached that refugee status, and you can explain this better than me, haven't reached that refugee status, but they're seeking to get that refugee status. So
Yeah. I mean, I think you could probably explain it, but I guess if you want me to jump in here.
yeah.
So the difference between refugees and asylum seekers, for those who are watching, are a refugee is vetted outside of the United States. And when they're brought to the United States, they have already been fully vetted by all of our security agencies. They've already been given something called an I-94, which is a legal document that allows them to move here. And so they come with papers. They are working through resettlement organizations that are immediately going to go register them with the Social Security office. They have to get jobs immediately. They actually owe the United States government back a travel loan. So they're brought here by the State Department, and they've passed all of that. And you're right, a lot of Americans don't realize that. Whereas an asylum seeker, it is still a legal status. So, but you can't get asylum outside of the country. You get asylum by coming to the border and either asking at a point of entry or once you're already in the country. So for example, sometimes an asylum seeker might be an international student who's been here for a couple of years, and either their political beliefs or they've maybe converted religions will cause them problems in their previous country. They might ask for asylum after they're here. Or the idea of we've seen a lot of folks coming to our southern border, like the caravan 2 years ago. Those were asylum seekers who were coming to present themselves and say, at the mercy of our courts, I have a credible fear and I'm in danger and I'm asking for asylum. But they end up having to come into the country and getting processed. And so it's a long process. And so we used to release asylum seekers into the interior, put bracelets on them so we knew where they were. But the last 2 years, we've had a very punitive method of dealing with them, which has involved family separations, putting them basically in jail. And so until folks like people at your church were able to host families, very few asylum seekers have had that kind of situation where they don't have to be in detention center.
Yeah.
So.
The other interesting piece there that I learned is that, and I don't know all the legalities here, but I learned that seeking asylum is completely legal. So, I hear often, well, they just need to come over legally. but it is legal to seek asylum. If you're fleeing your country, due to war, due to persecution, fear for your life, like, it is legal to seek asylum. I know that our national government recently switched some of that, and people can no longer seek asylum for gang violence or domestic violence, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the pieces that me as a Christian, it gives me pause, and I think, is that a just law? If there's someone who is escaping their home because they fear for their life because of gang violence or domestic violence, which are both common in places like Honduras, then is that okay?
It's a great question to ask. And something else for people who are watching this who, might be new to this conversation is our refugee resettlement program on average would resettle about 85,000 refugees a year. And so again, those are people who have been vetted outside and they've come to the US, flown here by the State Department. And this year we've only resettled just over 7,000 refugees, and the fiscal year ends October 1st. And actually we have had no allotments in our refugee resettlement numbers for many years coming from Central America. Or places like Venezuela has had hardly any, yet Venezuela is in a terrible situation and is actually producing a lot of people who are fleeing the country and are displaced. So there's no way for somebody who's fleeing violence in Honduras to ask for refugee resettlement and that legal vetting process outside of the country, because there's no ability to do that. And the numbers are so low that we're not even offering those places. So it actually ends up driving more people towards our borders to request asylum, which then has created, and then as you pointed out, we've actually tried raising the bar to make it harder for people to request asylum. And so the question is what are we doing? What kind of laws are we making? What kind of policies, and are they just? And I think that's an important question for Americans to ask themselves.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Tough stuff to think about.
Yep.
But important things that we should think about.
Absolutely.
So let's fast forward. So the conversation is not always easy these days to talk about immigration.
No.
What is your hope? Like, what is your hope for where we would go as a country and how that dialogue would move? And what is your hope for the church? So you could put on your American hat and your Christian hat. What would you like to see happen in our national dialogue about immigrants and about immigration?
Yeah. I don't think that the faith and the American are necessarily mutually exclusive, because what I would love to see is just more unity and honest dialogue, and folks who are willing to understand the way that the legal system is in place to keep people out. And even just understanding the difference between settling 85,000 people a year to we're down to 7,000, like, that's significant. And so then that it just has to be some sort of motivation to ask, well, why? Why are we creating these policies? Why is this part of the system? Why are we going from 85,000 to 7,000? And why does that matter? And then this is the faith piece. Why does that matter for me as a person of faith? And what does it mean for me as a person of faith to care for the alien among us, and to work for that biblical justice? So yeah, I would just like to see better dialogue, more bipartisan legislation here, more bipartisan support on immigration just laws. And I understand that it's a complex issue, but there just needs to be better mutual dialogue. There's just so much division in our country right now, and it breaks my heart because there needs to be this radical middle. And I just feel like we're missing that radical middle.
I really appreciate your words and you can hear your compassion behind your words.
Thanks.
Do you have anything last you would like to leave us with?
Hmm.
Any wisdom you've learned from the family that you've walked with or through this?
Yeah. I guess maybe a last parting thought, it's a big parting thought, is that there's a difference between charity and justice. So charity, what we're doing with the family is charity. We're supporting them. We are, sometimes we might need to help with rent. Sometimes we need to help with transportation needs. We might need to help with, appointments and getting things in place for them, help them find housing. Those are all feel good things to do, right? You're helping someone very tangibly. But justice is a lot harder, and it doesn't always feel good. This is where advocacy comes in. This is where, on my phone, I have my senators and my reps' phone numbers right here in my phone. So when I learn of things that come up that are unjust or don't make sense, I'm calling them and I've got it down now. I used to be scared to do it, but now I know. I call. This is Tera Dent. I'm calling from Akron, Ohio. I'm a constituent from zip code, I tell my zip code. And I'm calling because. And it literally takes 1 minute, 2 minutes. And though that's a piece of advocacy and working for justice and working for just laws that hopefully make it easier for families like this Guatemalan family to be able to live in peace. Ultimately, my dream would be to see countries where a large number of immigrants are coming from to see peace themselves. This is why I love organizations like AJS, Association for More Just Society, which is located in Honduras, because it's a Christian organization. What they do is they help hold their government accountable to implementing the law, to fight against corruption, to calling out corruption in their own governments. Organizations like IJM, International Justice Mission, they also, same thing. They work with countries all around the world to help those governments to enforce their laws. There's a lot of countries that don't enforce their laws, or there's a lot of corruption within their government where, it's, whatever, money's being stolen. There's just, it can just be so corrupt. So organizations, supporting organizations like IJM, AJS, and organizations that are working at more, just a higher level, policy level, governmental level, to help fight back and push back against this corruption. So that way, we don't have to have people having to flee their homes, because no one wants to flee their home. I don't want to have to flee my home.
No, we don't.
No one wants to, like the Guatemalan family, they're in a completely new culture, completely new language. They don't speak English, or very little English. Some of the kids are picking up on it, which is pretty cool. But no one wants to flee their home. Mm-hmm. And so that's another piece of this puzzle. It's like going back to, like, why would someone want to leave their home in the first place? Would you want to leave your home in the first place?
Empathy with it, that we don't want to leave. And so it should create some empathy in us and why they leave.
Yeah, exactly. So those are some finishing thoughts.
Those are good words, Tera. And if you keep talking, I'm going to give you a microphone at my next event.
Oh, goodness.
I think that is a good word to end. I really like that your experience in college and then how you live out your faith here in Akron. It is both practical on the ground and serving, and I love the picture you've helped us contrast between charity and justice. And actually, justice means fixing our broken laws, whether it's in the United States and our ability to do that with a democracy like ours, or the work that AJS is doing. And yeah, I think you bringing that to our attention is really, really important. So thank you so much for sharing and
Of
being here
course.
with us.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.